So, you've probably heard a lot about building with large language models, or LLMs. It often sounds complicated, like you need to be a coding wizard, deep in lines of Python, just to get something working. But what if it wasn't? What if you could build complex AI applications just by dragging and dropping blocks on a screen? That's the whole idea behind Langflow. It's a visual node-based UI for LangChain, which is one of the biggest frameworks out there for creating AI-powered apps. Think of it like a visual editor for your AI's brain, letting you see exactly how data flows and how different components talk to each other. The real magic of Langflow, though, isn't just in stringing together LLMs and prompts. It's in how easily it connects to the outside world. An AI that can only talk to itself is interesting, but an AI that can pull real-time data from a weather service, search the web, or access your company's internal database? That's a game changer. Langflow is built from the ground up with integration in mind. It provides a whole set of pre-built tools and components designed to make these connections feel less like a chore and more like part of the creative process. All right, let's make this real. For our example, we're going to build a simple flow that can tell you the current weather in any city. To do this, we need to connect Langflow to an external weather API. We'll use a free service like the OpenWeatherMap API, which is perfect for this kind of project. The first step, before you even touch Langflow, is to sign up for the API and get your API key. This key is your secret password that lets your application talk to their service. Keep it handy. You'll need it in a minute. It's a crucial piece of the puzzle for almost any API integration you'll ever do. Now let's jump into the Langflow interface. We'll start by dragging a few key components onto our canvas. We need something to take the user's input. A chat input node will work perfectly for that. This node will hold our question like, "What's the weather in New York?" Then, we need the star of our show, a component that can make an API call. For this, we'll use a custom component and write a small snippet of Python code. This might sound intimidating, but it's surprisingly straightforward. We're essentially just telling Langflow, take this city name and plug it into this specific URL for the weather API. Inside our custom component, we'll use Python's popular request library to send a GET request to the OpenWeatherMap endpoint. The URL will look something like api.openweathermap.org/data/2.5/weather, qcity and apids your API key. We'll configure our component to take the city name from the chat input and inject our secret API key. Once the API sends back the weather data, usually in a format called JSON, our component will extract the juicy bits, like the temperature and a short description, and pass that information along to the next node in our chain. The final step is to make sense of that data. We'll connect the output of our weather component to an LLM like Chat OpenAI. We'll give the LLM a simple prompt, something like, based on the following data, describe the weather in a friendly sentence. Weather_data. The LLM will then take the raw data, for example, temp 22, description, clear sky, and transform it into a natural human-readable response like, it's currently 22 degrees Celsius with clear skies. We connect this LLM to a chat output node, and just like that, we've built a weather bot in minutes. This simple workflow demonstrates the core pattern for almost any API integration. So how did we actually pull that off? It comes down to a few core components inside Langflow that are designed specifically for integration. These are your essential building blocks. The most powerful and flexible of these is the custom component. This is your escape hatch for doing pretty much anything you can imagine with Python. It gives you a blank slate to write your own code, import libraries, handle API keys securely, and define custom inputs and outputs. In our weather example, this was the component that did all the heavy lifting of talking to the external API. It's the ultimate power tool in your Langflow toolkit. Next up, you have the tool component. This one is a bit more structured than the custom component. It's designed to wrap a specific function or capability into a neat package that an AI agent can decide to use. For instance, you could create a getWeather tool. The agent, when asked a question about the weather, would intelligently recognize that it needs to use this specific tool to find the answer. This is a key concept in building more autonomous AI systems. Then, there are the built-in integrations. Langflow comes preloaded with a ton of components for popular services, so you don't always have to build from scratch. You'll find ready-to-use nodes for different LLM providers like OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google. There are also components for various vector stores, which are specialized databases for handling the kind of data AI uses for memory. Think Pinecone, Chroma, and Qdrant. These built-in options save a massive amount of time, as they handle all the connection logic and authentication behind the scenes. You just need to plug in your API keys. Finally, let's not forget the basic utility nodes that make integrations clean. Components like text input and chat input allow you to parameterize your flows, so you can easily change things like search queries or API endpoints without digging into the code. And the prompt node is essential for telling the LLM how to handle the data you get back from an API. By combining these different building blocks, custom components for flexibility, tools for agents, and built-in nodes for speed, you have a complete system for creating robust, connected applications visually. The built-in components are great, but what happens when you need to connect to a service that Langflow doesn't support out of the box? Maybe it's your company's internal product API or, some niche third-party service. This is where Langflow's flexibility really shines. You aren't stuck. The custom component node is your primary gateway to creating brand new integrations. By leveraging the power of Python within this node, you can essentially write a mini connector for any API that you can access. It's kind of like having a universal adapter for your AI flows. Let's break down how you'd build a new integration from scratch. Inside a custom component, you start by defining your inputs and outputs. For a new API, you might need inputs for an API key, a user ID, and a search query. Then, in the component's code block, you'll write the Python logic. This typically involves using a library like requests or HTTPX to make the actual web request. You'll construct the correct URL, add any necessary headers for authentication, and send the request. Once you get a response, you'll parse the data, usually from JSON format, and pass the relevant information to the component's output. One of the best practices here is to keep your custom components modular and reusable. Instead of building one massive component that does everything, break the task down. For example, create one component that handles just the authentication and another that performs a specific search. This way, you can reuse the authentication component across multiple flows. You can even save your custom components as part of a project, effectively creating your own personal library of integrations that you can drag and drop into any new project, which is honestly a huge time saver in the long run. Beyond just fetching data, you can also build custom components that send data. Imagine connecting Langflow to a service like Slack or a project management tool. You could create a flow where an LLM summarizes a long document and then uses a custom component to post that summary directly to a Slack channel. This turns Langflow from a data retrieval tool into an automation engine. The ability to easily create these two-way integrations, both fetching and pushing data, is what elevates Langflow from a simple prototyping tool to a platform capable of building serious, production-ready applications. So, we've walked through how to connect Langflow to pretty much anything. But why is this visual, modular approach so important? It really comes down to three things: clarity, speed, and maintainability. When your AI workflow is laid out in front of you as a graph of nodes and connections, it's incredibly easy to understand what's happening. You can trace the path of data from input to output, see exactly where an API is being called, and pinpoint where things might be going wrong. This clarity is invaluable, especially as your applications become more complex. You're no longer hunting through hundreds of lines of code to find a single bug. This visual approach also makes you faster. Much faster. Prototyping new ideas becomes a matter of dragging a few blocks around and wiring them up. Want to swap out one LLM for another? Just replace the node. Want to add a new data source? Drop in a custom component. This rapid iteration cycle means you can test more ideas in less time, and you can get a working proof of concept in front of stakeholders in hours, not weeks. It fundamentally changes the development process from a slow text-based grind to a dynamic creative exercise. Finally, and this is the big one for long-term projects, This modular design makes your work incredibly easy to maintain and scale. Because each component is a self-contained unit, you can update or fix one part of your flow without breaking everything else. If an API you're using changes, you only need to update that one specific custom component, not your entire application logic. This modularity also encourages reusability. That weather component we built? You can save it and reuse it in dozens of different projects. This builds up a library of reliable, tested components that accelerates all future development. Ultimately, tools like Langflow are democratizing AI development. They're taking the power of complex frameworks like LangChain and making them accessible to a much broader audience. By focusing on clean design, modularity, and seamless integrations, Langflow provides a platform where you can build sophisticated, data-aware AI applications without getting bogged down in boilerplate code. It lets you focus on the what instead of the how. So if you haven't already, I definitely recommend downloading it and trying to connect it to your favorite API. You might be surprised at what you can build in an afternoon.